Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again today because we have finished up another fantastic Star Trek book, and we've got to talk about it. That's why we're here, right? So this time, again, we're working our way through Book Trek, Peter David's Book Trek this year, and we finished up his last TOS book, which is, of course, The Captain's Daughter. And of course, you can see right from the beginning, you're getting yourself into a Sulu adventure. Gotta love that, right? Sulu must battle an old enemy with his daughter's life at stake. This is number 76 in the numbered series. And let's just dive right into the back here. When Demora Sulu, an exemplary young Starfleet officer, suddenly attacks her commanding officer, who kills her in self-defense, everyone is stunned. No one is more grief-stricken than her father, Captain Hikaru Sulu of the USS Excelsior. Determined to learn the truth behind his daughter's bizarre death, Sulu goes to the planet where she was killed and finds himself confronted by an old enemy, eager to destroy Sulu's reputation and his life. Bum-bum-bum. This was, again, written by Peter David, and this one was published in 1995. So, I don't remember where I picked this one up, but it has a plethora of stickers on it, which I always kind of like to look at the different stickers, kind of the history of the book and where it's been. And this book one time belonged to, actually look, the first time that this book was read, it was read by Deborah White in November 24th of 1995. So, very cool, Deborah. I hope you enjoyed the book as much as I did. Now, let's see if we can get a little bit more inside information about the creation of the Captain's Daughter. So, of course, here we're going to be referencing the wonderful book about books, and I'm looking for, probably going to have to look under captains, right? Not the, here we go, 107 to 108. Again, and this is Voyages of the Imagination here. So, let's read together, and I've not read this yet myself, what exactly Peter David had to say. Oh, goodness. He has a lot to say. Let's learn. Peter remembered. I think the idea of doing a story about Demora came from editor Kevin Ryan. I don't remember pitching a story to them about Sulu's daughter. In terms of constructing the story, it keyed off of Kirk's question that was voiced quite correctly in Star Trek Generations, which was, when did Sulu have time to have a daughter? It was almost a challenge to find a reasonable timeline for Demora to have been conceived and been raised by Sulu. That was almost an exercise in putting the puzzle together, figuring out where Demora was during key points in Sulu's life and what was going on with her at those particular times. Peter continued. The original title of the book was
Amazon Music.
No, what are you doing? I said nothing like that. Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we're fine. Peter continued. The original title of the book was Demora. Apparently the Star Trek marketing people hated that title. Why, I have absolutely no idea. I may have came up with The Captain's Daughter for the title, but I absolutely hated it. I also wasn't too wild about the cover art. I thought it was not a good picture of George Takei. Not bad. Because they made him look like a horse. I don't think he looks too much like a horse. Silly me if the book is called The Captain's Daughter. I would like to have seen The Captain's Daughter on the cover. I thought the story was good. Years after this novel came out, there was an attempt in some circles of fandom to rally support for more Captain Sulu adventures. Yes, both on-screen and in print, John Ordover decided to have the fans prove that another Sulu novel would be popular. I said, if you can get me 1,000 letters by this date, we'll do another Captain Sulu. And then we only got 800. Why did I do that? Because everyone was telling me how much they wanted a Captain Sulu novel, but when we did, by our most popular writer, Peter David, it did not do very well. You can argue that there were all sorts of reasons, that it wasn't clearly a Captain Sulu novel, that it was this, it was that, the title was wrong. You can give any sort of excuses, but the bottom line is that our most popular author did a Captain Sulu novel, and it didn't sell very well. It's always the dollars, right? From which I have to conclude that there's a lot of noise being made by a small number of Captain Sulu fans. I was willing to have my mind changed on that, giving the fans a month. If the demand really exists, you should easily be able to get 1,000, this goes on, letters to me. Not only did we not get the 1,000, but a lot of them had taken a petition form to their science fiction club or something, and had everyone sign it and put it in an envelope. And then when we got the whole stack of envelopes, pretty much on the same day, the same stamp, the same envelope, and the exact same letter inside, it's just signed differently. We stopped to think, how many people did this really represent? This is really going in deep here, isn't it? And how many people would actually buy it, as opposed to just being willing to sign for a friend? But the bottom line is we didn't make the 1,000. That was not, however, the last word on Captain Sulu fiction. Editor Marco Palmieri noted, I was already planning a new Excelsior novel when all this was going down. I didn't care about how many letters John got out. It just seemed silly to let something like that drive an editorial decision. When I developed the Lost Era series for 2003, an Excelsior novel, The Sundered, was the first novel in the set. It sold quite well, and readers can expect still another Captain Sulu novel down the road. Man, that is a lot of information about the captain's daughter. So now you've learned, just as I've learned, the whole backstory there. So interesting. I like how he came up with the kind of the story, or how to do the story, from that one line of Kirks. And it is kind of interesting to think about, with everything that where Sulu was at and what he was doing. How did he have time to have a daughter? So Peter David tells a fun little story and kind of fits that in, and it is a typical Peter David story too. Where you have your henchmen, you've got your gang leader, and you've got your henchmen, and they're all kind of described really well, and just kind of your typical villains. You have your typical action scenes that you would expect from a Peter David book, right? And it really all kind of fits together well in with what's going on with the movies, which was kind of one of the fun parts of this too, is that there are parts of this book where it's like you're going to experience Demora's side of when the whale probe came to Earth, so there's a lot of fun stuff in there like that. There is I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a movie called The Man Who Knew Too Little with Bill Murray. It's a very funny movie, and in it he is kind of he thinks that the situation that he's in is just kind of like a setup, a game, so he's just kind of playing along, and these everyone else is kind of actors putting on a part, right? And then of course it turns out to be that these people are actually real villains, and there's a bit in this story that I swear maybe must have came from that, because Sulu thinks exactly the same thing. And I thought that was great. Of course you're getting the Excelsior, you're getting the Enterprise B, and you're getting, I think one of the things I really enjoyed was getting to see like Captain Harriman's, I don't know, not redemption, but I mean, he was a captain of an Enterprise, right? And all we got to see was that little tiny bit of him in Generations, and he wasn't, he didn't inspire a lot of confidence, right? So in this book, you get to see more of that. He kind of turns that around, and just really good. So, all right, we'll kind of dive right into the story here a little bit, because there's some fun bits we want to talk about. We started this one on the 30th of June, and we finished it just today. Now let's see. I did some decent notes. Not bad. Wrote down some names of things that hopefully I wouldn't forget. So the book is divided into basically 5 different sections, right? Well, first off, I want to say, man, the back cover giving away the fact that she dies, that kind of stinks. I get that you're trying to draw people in, but that stinks. You don't want to. That's like it was a big surprise for me in the book, All right, we'll kind of get into what happened anyway. Starts out on the Enterprise B. They are going to, they're like cruising, whatever, patrolling. They get a distress call, and it is in like it's an older form, and it's in Chinese. So this interests Demora, and she looks further into it, and they track it to this planet. The one thing I didn't write down, the name of the gosh darn planet that they go to. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, it really doesn't matter anyway. Anyway, they get to this planet. They go down with an away team, Captain Harriman, I think a few other members of his crew, and Demora Sulu, and they begin their investigations. They can see a ruined city somewhere off in the distance, and they kind of each start doing their own thing. All of a sudden, Demora comes back completely naked and absolutely insane, and like basically like a and I kind of pictured the like the rage zombies from the 28 Days Later, or like the World War Z. Now it's like super fast, crazy, berserk, like human people. So anyway, she comes in absolutely crazy and tries to kill everybody just with like her teeth and hands, right? So they try to stop her. Or Captain Harriman tries to stop her. He stuns her. But in the end, he's forced to raise the intensity of his phaser, and he has to kill her there. And this was this part in the book right here. This got me right away, and I knew there was more to the story. There was more going on here, right? So he kills her, and then they immediately quarantine the planet, get off, and head home, right? And then cut to Sulu, and then Sulu's in his quarters, right? And he's almost like feeling that something had happened, right? So, lights. Anyway, we're back. Oh man, I didn't put the book up there. Oh, for Pete's sake, guys. Okay. Anyway, we'll just keep talking here while we do that. So Sulu knows something is wrong, and then he eventually gets the image, or the message in from Janice Rand, who's like his communications officer there, that Demora Sulu has been killed by her captain, right? And that's just like crazy. So he's having trouble, processing the whole thing. So, and that's the. Oh, okay, and then again, the book kind of it does a little bit of like time skipping too, right? So you have that section there, and then it jumps back into the past, where you get to meet Ling Su, or Susan Ling. However, she had various different names, and how kind of she comes into this. Now we're gonna find that book picture here. Hang on. So anyway, this is a time when they are. Chekhov and Sulu are on Earth. This is just after their first 5-year mission has ended, right? So they got a little bit of time for shore leave while the Enterprise is being refit. And they are spending that in this. Here we go. Boom! Oh, now we're perfect. And they're spending it in this. What was it what did he call it? It's basically like a theme park city that has been built in the middle of the Sahara Desert, right? So you go to this city, and it's supposed to be kind of like, like a seedy kind of underbelly place, right? But it turns out that a lot of it is faked. So they have, stage actors, stage events to make the place seem, cooler than it really is, right? So Sulu is bored with it. He's like, why did you bring me here, Chekhov? This is not kind of the adventure I was looking for. And Chekhov's like, well, just, maybe you'll get into it. Maybe you'll meet somebody. And he's not really getting into it. But then, as he's going down the road, he notices some people, like, chasing this lady, right? So he follows him, and he gets into it. And he gets into a fight with them, and the lady gets away. But and this is, like I said, this is the mysterious lady that he meets, all right? So the lady gets away, and I think he gets himself into trouble with these three. And again, Peter David's very good at writing these characters, these villains. You've got Tane, Rogers, and Thor, right? So, and they're all just, they're all described very well. I think Thor's like this hulking mountain of a man, right? And he, picks Sulu up by his neck or something. So anyway, these guys got Sulu on the ropes, and they're kind of wondering, what are you doing? Why are you interfering in this? Why, And Sulu at this point in time, is he's in the man who knew too little scenario. He's thinking, all right, I was bored, so Chekhov hired these dudes to, get a little action into the adventure. So he's just kind of playing along, thinking that it's all fun and games, right? Um, but then things start getting a little rough. Like they're kind of roughing him up a little bit, trying to get some information out of him. But then he's saved at the last moment by we'll just call her Susan. She comes in through the skylight, busts in, and they make a crazy escape using the like the propulsion boots. You remember like from the Star Trek movie that Spock was wearing when he saved Kirk from falling. Anyway, they make a crazy escape out of there, and they get away, and they make it to the. They get away basically, right? I'm not going to be able to go too much into this. I'm going to get too detailed, and we'll be talking for 40 minutes on this thing. Let's summarize. They escape. They talk a little bit. Sulu still is thinking he's part of some kind of game. They meet up with her buyer, who's going to buy this information or this thing that Tane was trying to get, right? So they meet up with the buyer, and this is when Sulu realizes this is not a game or a fake or anything. The buyer's head, pop. Someone snipes him from far away. He falls dead to the ground. They jump into this dude's ship to try to escape, and they're being pursued by Tane, Rogers, and Thor, right? And they're on these like speeder bikes, and they're in this little ground shuttle. It's not it can't leave, it can't fly. So again, a fun chase scene you've got here with Sulu showing off his piloting skills, and they eventually make it out of the city and all the way out into the desert. And Tane is hanging on to the roof of the freaking thing at this point, blasting away. The whole thing crashes, and her and Sulu kind of get lost in the desert, right? So they find an oasis. Just as they're resting and falling asleep, maybe something happens between them. They don't, they don't explicitly say, but you can tell that something does happen there. And when he wakes up in the morning, she's gone. He walks his way back to the city or whatever, and is able to meet back up with Chekhov, and then just kind of like this whole little part of his life is like done, right? And it just kind of writes it off as a very weird adventure that he had. So then they go back to the present, and now they have a whole section called Memorial, where they have, of course, Demora's Memorial. And, some interesting things go on there. Chekhov really goes off on Harriman and actually punches him. They get into a big fist fight. So there's a lot of very interesting scenes that go on there. And after that section, it goes to another going back to the past, Parenthood, and now you get to see how Demora came into his life. And basically, it was Bones that brought her in, right? So he found out about her somehow, and he's already done all the genetic testing and everything, and her mother had died, and she has nowhere else to go, so he brings her to Sulu, right? So then now Sulu has to kind of like make the decision of what he's going to do. Is he going to raise his daughter, or is he going to, send her off to be raised by someone else or some kind of school or something like that? And I thought that he did a great job here of putting a little bit in where Sulu was just about to accept first officer of the Bozeman, right? And instead he turned that down to pick up like a teaching position at the academy so that he could stay with her and raise her, right? So lots of fun stuff there as well. And then all right, we're going to have to kind of wrap it up here. We're approaching the 20-minute mark quickly. So there's a lot of fun scenes throughout the book. A lot of actually kind of very touching scenes too between him and his daughter, and like just how, again, I touched on this earlier, but there's the scenes where she is on Earth while he is going through the events of Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4, and it's interesting to see her perspective on all that too. So there's a whole scene, basically when the very end of the movie, right, of Star Trek 4, and they crash into the bay and everything. Like, that's all depicted there, and that's all done really well. Now the book ends in a very exciting way, to be honest with you, and I knew from the beginning that she wasn't really dead, right? So here in the very end of it, they start giving you those little clues that she feels like she's somewhere. She can hear voices around her, but like she's floating in something, so she doesn't really know what's going on. Sulu wants to know what happened, and he is not contented. So he basically goes against orders. He takes the Excelsior to the quarantined planet, takes a shuttle down, and starts his investigation. That is when Tane, Rogers, and Thor enact their plan, which at this point, Rogers and Thor are kind of like, Tane, you're losing a little bit. So they trap Sulu, just like they trapped Gamora, however long ago. And what they do is basically they found this old alien technology that creates clones. But the problem is, the clones, while they come out very fast, they come out crazy. So that's what happened, basically. They pulled her in, they stuck her in the goo, they sent out a clone of her. And why? Why would Tane do this? Because Tane thought that she was his daughter. Because he was actually with Susan Ling Su, prior to them being, caught up in that adventure in that city, right? So, that's a little thin at the end, maybe I'll admit, as far as that guy's reasoning goes, but in my mind, I think the dude was just a little bit crazy. So, anyway, he pulls Gamora out of the gooey pit, shows her to Sulu, right? And claims that, she's mine, right? But then Sulu's like laughing, he's like, well, no, she's definitely mine. We had all the tests done. And now this starts making that Tane dude a little bit more angry, right? Now, all this time, Sulu has already had a plan. He's pre-programmed his shuttle to take off, fly up into the air, and then crash down through the roof of this place, because he kind of had a feeling something was going on down here, right? So just as kind of the things are getting intense, boom, the shuttlecraft crashes in, and then you have this wonderful ending where they're battling against Tane, Rogers, and Thor. It gets a little gory. Things don't work out well for those three, of course, but and also a whole bunch of crazy zombies are released. So the whole end of the book is like one of those zombie movies where all these people are ravaging, and Sulu and his daughter kind of get up to the highest tower in the city after they can't escape from their shuttlecraft, right? And in the end, they're saved by Captain Harriman, who comes in on a shuttle, defying his father, the Admiral's orders, right? And, that's where he kind of redeems himself in the book, too. And that's done really well. So he comes in the end and he saves them. And, of course, because of all the circumstances, everybody turns out to be fine. And there's not going to be any, disciplinary issues, right? So, anyway, The Captain's Daughter. What a fun book, right? We had fun reading it. And, Peter David's book track is flowing along here swimmingly. So look at that, 2 lights out in one video. We're talking for too long here, friends. Anyway, next book. Ooh, The Wrath of the Prophets. Is that Ro-Laren? What is going on here? A Ro-Laren Deep Space Nine book, and this is a combo here. You've got Peter David, but you've also got Michael Jan Friedman and Robert Greenberger. That's gonna be a killer. So we'll get into that soon, and we'll be back to talk about that soon. As always, my friends, live long and prosper, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.